There are plenty of things to consider when it comes to creating your character in the Outer Worlds 2. Now, the Outer Worlds 2 in general, because of how scarce it makes skill points and the lack of respec, is obviously intended to make a lot of your decisions count. We realistically want to be taking advantage of that as early as possible if you want your playthrough to go smoothly. The key thing here is there are technically no wrong choices, and any playthrough is obviously going to be missing something because you're not going to be able to open every door and find every piece of loot because some things will just literally be locked off to you. You should realistically begin with an idea of what you want your character to be. So do you want your character to be some kind of commander? If that's the case, then you may want to be looking at things such as heroic here, but I'm not getting to this bit right now. I'm just letting you guys see this so you can see you can be a commander of your minions, you can be a sniper build, you can be kind of a generalist, and that's what we are going to be putting together in this video. Try to have an idea in your head of the kind of character you want to play as like a set archetype, and then work with that and try and stick within those bounds. It's when you try and mix too many things together that you're going to have trouble. A lot of the skill checks and stuff, they level up as the game progresses. So as an example, if I just put lockpicking up front here, in the first zone, you're going to need your lockpicking to be like 3 to 5 to be able to get through most of the doors and the locked chests and this kind of thing. Once you get into the second zone, that's going to go up from like 8 to 11. What you're going to find is if you want your skills to continue being useful, you have to keep them topped up. And because that's the case, if you get so few skill points, trying to spread them around to too many places is not going to be ideal. So with that being the case, this actually gives us something that's kind of strange when it comes to the background. You could just completely ignore it and have whichever background sounds cool to you, but there is a small amount of min-maxes we can do. The reason for that is if we pick something such as Professor, a lot of the times when this will give you speech options, they're actually going to be the same situations as if you were using a science response. If you really wanted to get the most out of this, and it really will only be minor, so I don't mean for this to be a huge point, pick something that's actually the opposite to the way that you want to play, or in my opinion, you should probably just pick something that's going to be kind of going along with what it is that you want to be doing. I'm probably going to pick Renegade for my live character that will be starting at the same time as this video goes out, actually. And now we can look at the traits. So the way that this works is we can pick one of these for free. Now, in my opinion, the most powerful ones are either lucky, because getting the additional crit chance is massive, and that's raw crit chance as well. So it's not like if a weapon has 1% crit chance, you get 0.2. No, that is just an extra 5%. So 1 in 20 shots is now going to be a critical chance by getting that. So that's just a permanent damage increase. The other really strong one, in my opinion, is Brilliant, because as we just said, skill points are actually really rare, and this is going to allow us to pick an extra specialization, which is basically 2 free skill points, which is effectively a free level. So pretty strong to get that, in my opinion. We can in fact pick an extra one. So in our case, you want to maybe get Brilliant and Lucky, and now we have to pick a disadvantage, so a negative trait. I think this is pretty easy to put up with. I think most people should go for having 2 positives, and I think Brilliant and Lucky give you the most flexibility, which is why that's what I'm picking. Innovative is also good in my opinion, because in the early game ammo is tight, but because we're going to get this Brilliant here, I'm going to put that into guns, and that is going to mean that we're going to do more damage, which means that we use up less ammunition. Honorable mentions are going to go to Nimble, because there is no dodge in the game, so additional combat sprint speed is actually quite strong. And I feel like Witty goes kind of well with Abrasive if you want to have a really destructive playthrough, because this basically means no matter how many people you unalive during your playthrough, your reputation with any of the factions is not going to go up or down, so you could just kind of do whatever you want with that. But I feel like that's kind of a specific style of playthrough. Moving on to skills then, we'll briefly touch on them all. Speech is basically going to give you extra options when it comes to dialogue in the game. You can get damage out of this, so if you are really sold on being a bit of a diplomat, there is a perk that would allow you to get 2.5% additional damage from your speech skill. So you can use this to scale damage, but it's not going to anywhere near keep up with the likes of guns or anything else. This is true of a lot of the other perks as well. We can actually get something similar out of lockpick, and I think science as well also has some damage bonuses, but ultimately I think speech is one of the least useful. The only real good thing about it is that it's extra damage against humans, but like I say, I don't think this one's all that useful. So I think this is one of the ones that we can get rid of rather easily. Sneak is obviously going to be good if you want to be some kind of sniper, and I actually think if you're going to try to be a stealth slash sniper character, having this paired with observation is going to be pretty big for you because weak spot damage is basically headshots. So that means we get extra sneak damage for being hidden, and then you get extra damage if you can get them in the head as well. So I would probably combine those two if you're going to try and be some kind of stealth character, but that's not the kind of character that I'm going to be building. I find that when I'm just kind of exploring out in the world and I don't really know what's coming, so on your first playthrough, a lot of the time the enemies have already seen you before you even know to start sneaking. So on your first playthrough, probably not great. On your second playthrough, it might actually be really cool. But for now, I'm going to choose not to read this one out, but I am going to read observation out. Now, of course, you're seeing on the prompt here that it identifies some caches, but I think having some random things that we have to find is not as good as having lockpicking, because lockpicking is going to open doors. And let's say if you were to trade off observation and lockpicking is just going to win. And that's without even thinking about the fact that this is going to give us evasion chance, which is just a chance to completely mitigate all range damage. Science is actually really good. This is basically going to improve your ability to do elemental damage, which is quite good as long as you are managing your weapons against the enemies that you are shooting, and the energy meter that you see it using builds up. The time dilation is cool and you can build around that, but not only that, there is a shield as well that's also really strong, and some other stuff as well that we can get as we go through the game. So science is pretty good. I would recommend not reading this one out, and maybe even being one of your primary skills if you're looking for something more futuristic and sci-fi. Medical is quite cool as well, mostly for the toxicity crash threshold that you can see there. So if you look at the video that it shows you, you see the green building up. If that hits the top, you can't use any more healing until you've completely recovered from the crash. So this can be quite debilitating and is something that you'll probably take in harder playthroughs. If you're going to turn the difficulty up and you feel like you might be needing to heal more often, this is actually something that you might want to have. I am not a fan of melee in any game, so I'll be reading that straight out for my character. But obviously, if you want to play as a melee character, that's obviously up to you. You may then want to read out the guns or read out something like the explosives. Lockpicking is self-explanatory. There's no lockpicking minigame or anything, so this is just a skill check. You walk up to a lock. If you beat the number, you can use a lockpick to open the lock, and then you get extra loot. Highly recommend it. It has some pretty good passives as well, so quite like that. So I won't be reading that one out for my character. I will be removing leadership from mine unless a patch comes out that improves followers. My experience with the companions is they are fun to interact with. They're good sometimes if you need them to help you with some speech checks, because they will actually help you with that. But in combat, I found them to be pretty much useless. Now, it could be because I just didn't have a leader type build, and you can see that they obviously want you to have one because we have faster abilities. Then, as you can see here, we can increase their damage and health. They also are not going to run out of ammunition, so maybe there's something there. But in my experience, they go down really easy. Even when I was over leveled and went back to some like lower level areas just to do some clearance, they just were not pulling their punches for me. So I don't think concentrating on the companions is all that ideal. Hacking is very similar to lockpicking in that basically you're going to have times where you might want to hack into something, so I probably wouldn't read this one out. It's up to you if you want to take it as one of your major skills at the beginning. I feel like generally you should probably choose between hacking and lockpicking, and you're going to have times when you wish you had the other one. They're just pretty much a trade-off. Guns is pretty much essential as far as I'm concerned. I will obviously be taking that one as one of my main skills. Increasing the amount of damage we do, therefore less ammunition expenditure, is just really, really useful to have. And explosives is basically the same, apart from you don't do most of your damage with explosives, so it's up to you if that's something that you want. There are occasions where there are like doors and areas where if you have high explosives, sometimes you can blow your way through. But often when that's the case, you can actually get through engineering. It's not 100% the case, but engineering gets you through that anyway. And so I prefer to have engineering over explosives. So for me, I'm actually going to leave explosives available. I'm going to have sneak redded out, speech redded out, observation, melee, and leadership. And this gives me as much customization with this as I would like. And for the beginning of my playthrough, I'm going to be picking engineering, guns, and lockpicking. This is quite different to how I did it on my initial playthrough, where I actually had science instead, because I thought science would be cool, and it is cool, and I may end up putting some points into this. But what I would suggest is that you start out with your first 3 skills, and through the first zone, maybe even until you're like level 10, try to exclusively level those 3 skills. Once that's done, then you can start bringing other skills up. Maybe if you want some extra stuff from science, for example, you can start bringing that skill up from that point. The reason I'm suggesting this is because there is a a trait that we can pick up as we play the game, which allows you to get extra skill points, but you can only raise your lowest skill that you've put points into. This is obviously a huge advantage because what it'll mean is that you're going to get an extra skill point every level. So that's basically 50% more skill points and allows you to become much more powerful that way. So that is my explanation on all of the skills and my advice on creating your character. Hope that helps you out.